Hey class, Prof JC here. We're on the continued march where we're talking about this idea of mental models, not idea, concept of mental models. And again, just a quick review. Most of us go from information, emotion, decision, right? That's how it typically works for many people. What we're trying to do with these mental models is move from information, mental model, right, to decision. So again, that takes out the emotion. I think that's really important. Today, what we're going to talk about is a little bit of a touchy one, and I thought about how do we not talk about this, but I think it's important. And not all of you on the call are going to be a person who struggled with this or has struggled with this or does struggle with this, but some of you on the call, if you're honest with yourself, maybe you'd say that you've struggled with this at some point in your lifetime. And so what we're going to talk about today is the jealousy tendency. And we're going to go to a website called fs.blog, F as in Fox, S as in sugar. I don't know. That's not the right word I'm supposed to say, I'm sure, with the military terms, but fs.blog. It's a great blog, lots of great posts on there. I recommend it if you like to read blogs, you like to do any kind of reading, this is a website that I would get to. But they talk a lot about mental models, and so the one I want to read to, that I'm going to read through a little bit today is this one called jealousy tendency. Now, as I share the screen, you're going to notice here the first sentence. This is the most important sentence for you to understand. Okay, the first sentence is why we're talking about this, and it's important for us to understand why we have what's called this jealousy tendency. So here we go. Make myself a little bit bigger over here in the corner so you guys can see my pretty face there. Okay, so mental model, bias from envy and jealousy. Now watch this. Okay. Now it's not that first line, but it's important to read that tagline up there from Warren Buffett. It is not greed that drives the world, but envy. Okay, so we'll get into that as we talk about this. There's a difference between jealousy and envy, and we'll look at that a little bit today. I don't want to dive too much into this because I could read the whole thing and that would take a lot of time. But so I'll try to summarize this as best I can. But this first line right here is really important for us to understand. Why do we have envy? Why do we have jealousy? Because of this right here. It is a fact of life that we are not equal, not biologically, not culturally. And that's where it stems from. Okay. Any kind of envy, any kind of jealousy, right? So jealousy is, you have something that I want and I'm jealous of you. It's kind of an inner emotion, right? It takes place within ourselves. Maybe you've been jealous at the workplace before, right? Someone else gets that promotion and it's the promotion you thought you should have, or it's the promotion that you want. You know, I experienced this. I remember when I realized that I really struggled with this in several areas of my life, especially in my younger years, back in my 20s. But I remember the first time that I experienced it professionally. I was in the Army, and I just gotten to my base in South Korea. Just gotten out of basic training, hadn't been there for a couple of days, and they had a promotion ceremony. And there was this guy, for whatever reason, he was a high-speed person, and I remember I was just jealous of him because he was really good at what he did, and he got promoted. He got promoted to corporal, I think from E4 to corporal, which was right between, he was getting ready to go become a sergeant, but they gave him corporal because they wanted to give him some more leadership roles and the recognition that he is not just a specialist E4, he's a corporal in a leadership position. And I had been in there less than a week, and I was already jealous of him. And I remember, it's so much that I'm talking about it now, 20-something years later. And I remember sitting there thinking, why am I this jealous? Why am I this angry at this person? And that's where it came from. I wanted those corporal stripes, right? I wanted what he had, right? So some of you may have experienced this. Maybe you've experienced it in relationships, right? You have a friend maybe, and other people try to get close to that friend. You don't want them getting close, right? Or maybe it's a relationship you have with a partner, a spouse, right? A boyfriend, girlfriend. And you don't like when they give their attention to other people. You want it all for yourself. That's kind of jealousy. Envy is a little bit further. Okay, it's a little bit of a deeper step. It's a little bit more of a hardcore step. Envy is when we take that feeling that we have of that. It kind of starts with jealousy. It's like, you have something that I want, but envy takes a little further. Not only do you have something I want, but I'm going to make sure that I get it, and I'm going to make sure that you don't get it anymore, right? It's now the feeling of, you have something I want, and not only do I want it, but I don't want you to have it. Okay. Jealousy says, okay, you got promoted, I didn't get the promotion. Oh, there's that jealousy inside of it. Envy is, Now I'm going to do the work I need to make sure that you don't keep that promotion. I'm going to sabotage you in any way I can. And I hope that none of you are like that. I hope that none of you have done that. And even when I told you about the story in the military, the gentleman's name was Corporal Zemeckis, something like that. Zemeckis, it was kind of a weird name. It started with a Z. I was going to say it wasn't Zemeckis, like Robert Zemeckis, the guy that he's the movie guy. It was Corporal Zemeckis. It was something along those lines. We ended up actually becoming good friends. And I'm going to get to that here in just a second about how we can turn jealousy and envy into something that is good for us. And that's why it's an important mental model for us to have, because it's important when we're feeling this. I want to give us some tools that we can work with today. But let me do a little bit of reading here. Some inequities come from flawed governing systems, but most are simply due to luck, the vagaries of life. Some of us are born healthier, prettier, smarter than others. Some will encounter opportunities to become extremely wealthy, and some will simply be born at the right place and right time, just as many will be born without such good fortune. It's difficult to imagine that these differences will not matter in our everyday interactions. When you think of how natural the differences among us are, you should quickly come to realize the potential power and frequency that bias, and I think that's an important word for you to understand as well, bias from envy and jealousy can have on world affairs. It's built deeply into the human condition from birth. Okay, so one of the things that I have, and I'll be transparent with you and say that this is something I've wrestled with in my own life, and I share that all the way back to 25 years ago. But if I'm not careful, it rears its ugly head even today, right? With this idea of being jealous or being envious of other people, right? But it's something that was so ingrained in me from the early years, but it's something I still wrestle with. But the thing I've come to realize, it's a human condition. It's not like it's not a flaw, right? It's just the human condition, because I exist and you exist and the next person exists and the next person exists, and none of us are equal, right? So some of you are going to have more money than I have. Some of you are going to have less money. You're going to be better looking than I am. I'm going to be better looking than the next person, right? So it's because we live in this world where so many people are different. This is going to happen, but we have to understand when this happens and understand that it will cause bias within ourselves, right? The concept of jealousy is as old as modern humanity itself and has permeated our culture worldwide. We are advised not to brag too much, for it can evoke feelings of envy and jealousy in others, right? It's one of the reasons why we don't talk about pay, right? Because if you make 150 grand a year and I make 75 grand a year, then I'm going to immediately feel jealous of you. Instead of being grateful for the 75 grand that I make, all of a sudden now it's not enough. When maybe a few years ago I thought, I would think if I could just get the 75 grand, I'd feel really good about myself. And I get the 75 grand and then I meet someone who's making 150 grand. Oh, it's not the same. There comes that jealousy again. But you will get to 150 and guess what? You're going to meet someone who's making 300 grand a year. And guess what? You're going to feel jealousy and you're going to feel that all that again, right? It's just the natural human condition about where we are. It's as old as time, right? Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, and other religions have at least one cautionary tale about the destructive consequences of being captivated by these emotions, as well as the dangers of being the one who is envied, right? So not only is it dangerous to be the one who's envying someone else or being jealous, but it's also dangerous to be the one who is envied. There are stories of people who've been envied who are murdered. We see this today, right? We don't necessarily, when we read the stories about, people who get gunned down on the streets or murder, we don't necessarily, they don't tell us the motive. So-and-so was envious of so-and-so, that's why this happened, right? They don't necessarily say that, but you can read into a lot of stories of murders and people being put in jail today and stabbings and all this kind of, and a lot of those, if we were to dissect them, we would see at the core of it was some kind of a jealousy or envy, right? So it impacts us today. It's the reason why there are insecure bosses. Well, it's not the reason why there are insecure bosses, but we see it in the workplace when we see maybe a boss, or I've heard multiple stories of this. I teach leadership, right? So I hear constantly stories where the boss takes credit for what somebody else does, right? Because it's a jealous factor. And now they have the power where they don't have to feel that jealousy. So what they do is they take credit for someone else so they don't have to feel the feeling of jealousy that, hey, you did something that I didn't do, right? And so it causes a lot of destruction in our world today, right? The Stoics knew all about envy and warned us against its consequences constantly. Seneca described a wise man as one who was content with his lot, whatever it be, without wishing for what he has not. So that's just basically saying you're grateful for what you have. You're content with what you've been given. Right? Tales of envy, and I won't go into these. You can read all kinds of stories of envy. The article goes on to talk about two different types of envy, right? There's one, it's a feeling of inferiority that motivates a person to improve themselves. So that's a good type of envy, right? And that's something that I want to talk about here in a second. The other type is a malicious envy, which motivates the envious to take good things from other people. Right? For Aristotle, the evil of malicious envy lay in its desire to lessen the good in the world and experience joy at another's misfortune. Okay, also called Schadenfreude, which mysteriously enough has no equivalent word in English. Right? So basically what it's saying, and I think here's the point that I want to make, right? Because there's so much more that we could read about this, but we don't have time to go on all this. Here's the point that I want to make is that when we talk about this bias from envy and jealousy, is the understanding that not all things are equal. Right. And I know we live in a world today where there's major pushes for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And all of that is good. And I stand behind all of that. And I think it's wonderful that we're starting to see more of that. I understood affirmative action. I know a lot of people were against it, but I understood it. Right. When you really dive into the issue and you begin to see, hey, there are certain races and certain communities and certain groups of people that need help, underrepresented groups of people who need help in our world. They need legs up. They're just as smart. They're just as capable. They just don't have the same amount of opportunities. So let's institute affirmative action. Today it's called DEI, right? It's another form of it, right? And I'm for all of it because we live in a world where people are separate. Now, I'm not saying we need to take it to extreme. I think we also, we don't need to be saying, hey, just because you're an older white person that you shouldn't have, you shouldn't have opportunities. I'm against that. I don't believe in that at all, right? I think that there's a way of doing it, right? And if you're going to get the opportunities, like for someone like myself as an Afro-Latino, I still have to perform at the same level, right? If I've been given an opportunity, it doesn't mean I get to show up and not do my job. I still got to do my job. And in some ways, and those of you who might be, Black or Latino, you're minority, you're from an underrepresented group, you get it. In some ways, I got to work harder than everyone else around me, right? So that's a whole nother story there. But it's because of the fact that people are made different, and we can't deny that. I'll hear, I've heard people tell me before, I don't see color. I'm colorblind. Well, why would you want to do that? Why do I want you to do that? I love my skin color. I love the person God made me. I love the person God made you to be, right? Whether you're white or brown or black, whatever it may be. I don't want to deny that, right? So we don't want to get into that thing where we deny it and we say, well, there are no differences. There are absolute differences. So we have to understand that's the reason why we feel jealous, but or envious. But here's the thing. Here's the part of the mental model that I want you to understand. Does your envy, does your jealousy, okay, does it help you improve yourself and the world around you, or does it make you disimprove? I don't know if that's the right word to say. Disimprove yourself and the world around you. Does it empower you to do better and to make the things around you better, or does it disempower you? Okay. And do you then want to become destructive? Are you now, when you feel envy, when you feel jealous, does it make you want to construct or destruct? So let me give you a basic example. So let's say I'm out and about, right? So I'm going to give you at the core, right? I'm out and about, and let's say, I'm dating someone. I'm actually married, but let's say I'm dating someone, and we're out and about. And let's say I go to the gym and I feel like I'm decently fit, but maybe I'm in a season like I actually am right now where, I've got a lot of other things, finishing a doctorate, trying to be a good dad and all this stuff. So I'm not able to make it to the gym as much as I want to. And so, you gain a little extra weight over. But so I'm out and about with my partner, spouse, and some guy walks by who's just fit. Right, in all the right places, and just looks good, and you can tell they spend 4 hours a day in the gym, and here's me trying to be a good dad, but I just can't compare. And then maybe I notice that my partner just happens to glance that way or something like that, and then this fit of envy or jealousy comes in, right? This thing of, I didn't like that. I don't like that, that she checked him out, or maybe if you're female, I don't like that he checked her out or whatever. Now, a good form of envy and jealousy will then make me say, okay, I didn't like that necessarily, but what can I learn from the situation? What can I learn from that person right there to make me become better? And so maybe what I say is, hey, I don't necessarily like that. I want to be, I want to make sure that I'm fit and toned like that, that my, that my, my girl is not checking out another guy or something like that, right? Again, this is basic form of jealousy and envy. I understand this. So what I do is I'll say, well, let me hit the gym up a little bit more. I need to be more disciplined in this, right? I don't like feeling this way. So how about I get better? So instead of trying to bring that person down and start talking bad about them or be angry about the situation, I say, you know what? I don't like how I felt in that situation. How do I get it better? I need to discipline myself more, so I'm going to the gym so I don't necessarily have that feeling of inferiority. The same thing in the workplace. Someone else gets that promotion, right? Instead of trying to take them down, instead of not celebrating for them, say, well, what can I do to get better, right? Is there something that I need to do? I've been passed over for promotion a couple times, whatever it is, so there's something that I can do to get better, right? So how do I get better in this situation versus how do I take this other person down? Okay, so that's all I want to go. There's so many other directions that we could go with this. There was actually another article that I pulled up that talked about this as well. And it just says down here, right? You should be conscious of the jealousy tendency in your own decision-making process. While a competitive streak, right, inferiority envy might benefit you, and we just talked about that. It's the kind of envy that makes us better, right? We get a little bit competitive now. We say, hey, that person got promoted. I got passed over. I'm going to get better. And next time promotions come around, I'm going to be the one promoted. And now I'm stepping up my game, right? It might benefit you in a fast-moving startup. Wanting other people to fail, which is that malicious envy we just talked about, will only distract you, right? That's a distraction. And again, you're trying to bring someone else down as opposed to elevate your own self, right? Overcome envy by reminding yourself of your similarities to this person, which will trigger your empathy, right? How am I like this person that I'm feeling jealous of right now? That I'm feeling envious of right now? How are we alike, right? And avoid the temptation to sabotage them. Turn those impulses into growth opportunities. What skill or habit can you improve to get their results? That's what I'm talking about right there. Okay, that's where we're trying to get to right there, is when we look at somebody, we look at another situation, maybe it's a company you're trying to build, right? And you look at the other company and you say, hey, there's something about that company, but instead of being jealous of their success, right? That's kind of the season I'm in right now, building my own company, my own consulting company. I could look around and be jealous of other people, or I can look at them and say, man, I want to get there. I want to have that same annual revenue coming in every single year. And how do I do it? What are the steps they do? So now, instead of being jealous of them, being envious of them, now I'm benchmarking against them. They become my benchmarkers, right? So now I'm going to try to get as good as I can so I can be, I'm going to try to beat them. Right? But it's not necessarily about them. It's inner driven, right? It's about me getting better. And then as I get better, the whole world around me gets better, right? So it's that understanding that jealousy and envy, right? It is the core. It's the reason why so many negative things have happened in our world around us. So we have to understand it. We have to see it, the bias that it causes us. And then how do we say, okay, how do I take this envy? How do I take this jealousy? And how do I make it, how do I help this situation make myself better and make the people around me better? Okay, so that's where we need to take it. So I want you to understand that this is going to happen to you. And again, when you're in those moments, instead of going from, the information, which is whatever that is, someone else got promoted, to my emotions, which is I'm feeling really jealous right now. I'm feeling really envious right now. So let me take him down, right? Well, let's put this mental model in there. Recognize what's happening. It's normal. It's natural, right? There are differences. That person may have had a leg up. They may have been there longer. They may have more degrees because they have a better degree than you have because they come from a family that could afford that, right? Maybe it's something that you can't have at this time, or maybe you can. I don't know, right? But instead of going from that information to emotion, go from information to this mental model right here and say, how do I become better, and how do I make the world better around me so that I don't necessarily have these feelings of inferiority? Okay, so here's the question I have for you right now. You probably know what I'm going to ask you. Have there been times in your life, all of us have felt jealous, and I don't care what you say. Don't try to argue with me on that one. I can't stand on, I'm not a jealous person. We all have it at certain points, okay? So now I want you to name a time where you've been jealous or envious, right? You know the difference, and it was destructive. And now I want you to, maybe you can't name a time, but I'd love for you to name a time when you were jealous or envious and it led you to do something good. But if you don't have that story yet, then tell me what you will do next time. Okay, the next time I feel jealous or envious, here's what I'm going to do, right? But if you have a story of something you've done, share that. So again, the first part of it is tell me a time that you've been jealous or envious and it led to something destructive in your life, and another time you've been jealous or envious and it actually led for you to build yourself or build other people. And if you don't have that story, tell me what you're going to do in the future. That's all I got for you today. I hope that this has added value to you. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.